Hey, everybody, and welcome to our deep dive today, all about crane operator safety and certification.
Absolutely crucial stuff.
It is presented by Safety One Source. And whether you are a safety professional, a crane operator, or maybe thinking about getting your license, this one's for you.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack.
There is. Yeah. We're going to be looking specifically at OSHA's Subpart CC regulations.
Bit of a jungle sometime.
It can be. So we're going to break it all down and help you make sense of it all.
Sounds good.
So to start us off, what exactly is OSHA Subpart CC, and why should we even care?
Well, you can kind of think of Subpart CC as the Bible of crane safety.
Okay.
Especially in construction. It lays out all the essential requirements to keep everyone safe when you're on a job site.
Gotcha. So when we're talking about cranes, is it like every single type of crane, or is it just those big tower cranes you see in cities?
It's actually a lot broader than that. Pretty much anything that you would think of as a crane, like if it can lift lower and move those suspended loads horizontally, Subpart CC is going to cover it. So that could be your mobile cranes, crawler cranes, even those smaller truck-mounted cranes that you see driving around.
Oh, okay.
But of course, with OSHA, there are always going to be some exceptions.
Right.
So things like those really small cranes that can only lift, say, under 2,000 pounds. Those are going to have different rules. And then things like Derricks and side boom cranes, those have their own set of rules in a different part of OSHA.
So it sounds like lifting capacity really matters.
It does play a big role for sure,
Okay.
But it's not the only thing that matters.
Gotcha.
The type of crane is important, and it can get kind of surprising.
Oh, really?
How so?
Well, have you ever seen those massive drag lines
Yeah.
they use for excavation?
Yeah.
You might think, oh, that's a pretty predictable job. They're just digging. But those actually fall under Subpart CC as well.
Really? I would think that since it's so repetitive, they would be exempt or something.
You would think so, but OSHA actually recognizes that with dragline operation, you've got different ground conditions all the time.
Oh, that's true?
You have unpredictable weather.
Yeah. And that can throw in a whole bunch of hazards.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So even though the task itself might seem really repetitive, they need to have that operator knowledge and expertise.
Right, because anything could happen.
Exactly. So it's a good example of how OSHA is really looking at the big picture when it comes to crane safety.
Yeah, they're thinking of everything.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the operators themselves. What does OSHA say about how we train someone to operate these potentially very dangerous machines?
Well, one of the most fundamental things in Subpart CC is that employers have to provide training for every single crane operator.
Okay, that makes sense.
No exceptions.
You can't just throw them in there.
Exactly. And it's not just about, reading the manual.
Right.
OSHA wants a blend of that formal instruction.
Okay.
And then hands-on practical experience.
So they're actually getting in there.
Yeah. They want to make sure that operators can be comfortable and competent in those real-world scenarios.
So it's more than just checking a box.
For sure. It's about building those skills.
Gotcha. So once the training is done, how does an operator actually get certified?
So there's not just like one Crane Operator 101 exam.
Okay.
There are actually 3 main pathways to certification.
Okay.
And which one you take depends on a few things, like where you're working and what type of work you're doing.
Gotcha.
So one common route is government licensing.
So if my state or local government offers a crane operator license, I can just do that.
Yeah, if it meets OSHA standards, then you're good to go.
Okay.
But that's not always an option,
Okay.
depending on where you are. So if government licensing isn't available, there's also the option of going through an accredited testing organization.
So what's the difference between those two?
So these testing organizations are vetted by national agencies like ANSI,
Okay.
and they're making sure that they're keeping a really high standard.
Gotcha. So they're legit.
Yeah, and this is really important because it means that your certification is portable.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, you can work in different states and know that your credentials are good.
That's really important for people who travel.
Absolutely.
So we've got those 2 options. Are there any others?
There's one more. It's called an audited employer program,
Okay.
and it's less common.
Okay.
And basically, some employers develop their own in-house programs.
Oh, wow.
But to make sure that they're meeting those national standards, they have to have a really thorough audit done by an independent third party.
So someone's checking up on them.
Exactly, to make sure that it's legit.
Okay, so let's say I am on the path to certification no matter which way I go. What should I expect?
Well, you're going to have to pass 2 tests.
Okay.
A written test
Okay.
and a practical exam.
Makes sense.
So the written test covers a lot of information.
Like what?
It's going to cover things like crane controls, load calculations,
No.
understanding load charts, knowing how to stay safe around power lines.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
But here's a fun fact.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be in English. Yeah, OSHA actually allows for tests to be administered in any language that the candidate can understand.
That's really cool.
As long as it's documented what language they used, and they're only working on equipment that has materials in that same language.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's all about accessibility.
Awesome. But the real test is getting behind the controls, right?
Yeah, that's where you get to show off what,
What's involved in that?
So you're going to have to prove that you can safely inspect the equipment,
Okay.
maneuver it, apply that load chart data accurately, and, of course, shut down and secure the crane properly.
So you've really got to know what you're doing.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say I pass those tests. I am officially a certified crane operator.
Congratulations.
Am I good to go for life?
Not quite.
Oh.
It's more like a driver's license. You have to renew it.
Oh, okay.
So certification is usually valid for about 5 years.
Okay.
And then you've got to go through recertification.
Does that mean I have to take all those tests again?
It depends. Testing organizations have some flexibility in how they handle recertification.
Gotcha.
But the goal is to make sure that the operator still has all the necessary knowledge.
Of course.
So sometimes a certain number of operating hours without any incidents can be enough.
So experience really counts.
Absolutely.
That's good for people who don't love tests.
Yeah, but OSHA also recognizes that even if you're a really skilled operator, some people just don't test well. Maybe they've got test anxiety or they're not familiar with computers.
Yeah.
So there are options like doing supervised work as an operator in training to help them prepare for recertification.
Oh, that's nice. They get to keep working.
Exactly.
So it's not just about getting certified. It's about maintaining those skills.
Absolutely.
So let's say I've done all of that. I aced my tests.
Yeah.
I'm certified. I'm feeling good. Can I just go on any job site and hop in a crane?
Not so fast.
Oh, there's more.
The employer still has a really important role to play.
Okay.
OSHA requires them to evaluate you on that specific piece of equipment.
So it's not just about the general certification.
Nope. This is about that specific crane.
What?
Looking at the size, the configuration, all the safety devices, even the software.
Wow.
Because crane technology is always changing.
Right.
So this makes sure that you're up to speed.
So they really want to make sure that you know what you're doing.
Exactly.
And how do they make sure that it's a thorough evaluation?
Well, OSHA says they have to document everything.
Okay.
Keep a record of all your skills and that you've demonstrated your competence.
Okay.
This creates a paper trail, basically.
So it's all very transparent.
Exactly. It's all about accountability.
So really OSHA's looking at every single step of the way to make sure things are safe.
That's exactly right. From the training all the way to that final evaluation, it's all about safety.
I'm seeing how detailed they are.
It's a lot to think about.
It is.
It really is. It's amazing how much goes into it.
It is. And it's clear that they're serious about safety.
Yeah.
So for our listeners out there, the safety professionals, the crane operators, the people going for their license, what are the big takeaways here?
I think the most important thing is that OSHA subpart CC, that's the foundation of crane safety.
Yeah.
Especially in construction.
Yeah.
It's not just a suggestion, it's the law.
Right. You have to follow it.
You have to. And understanding those regulations, that's like step one.
Right. So we talked about getting certified, and it seems like there are a few different ways you can go about it.
Yeah, there are a few different paths you can take, like government licensing,
Right.
those accredited testing organizations, or even that audited employer program.
Right. So you just find what works best for you.
Exactly. And no matter which way you go, you're going to have those written and practical tests.
Right. You've got to prove you know what you're doing.
Yeah, you've got to show that you have the knowledge and the skills to operate that crane safely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you've got your certification, but it doesn't end there.
Nope. It's like anything else. You've got to stay current.
Recertify every 5 years and keep learning about new technology and equipment.
The industry is always changing, so you have to keep up with it. So let's get back to training for a minute, because that's where it all begins.
For sure. And OSHA is really specific about the training requirements.
Like what?
Well, you can't just, throw someone in the crane and wish them luck.
Right.
You have to give those operators in training the information they need.
Yeah. So they can recognize and avoid risks.
Exactly. It's all about being proactive, not reactive.
I like that. So what does that training look like?
OSHA says it has to be a combination of formal instruction, like classroom stuff,
Okay.
or online modules, and then that hands-on experience.
So they get the theory and the practice.
Exactly. That's how you really learn.
Now, when someone is in training, can they actually operate the crane?
Yes, but
There is?
they have to be supervised by a designated trainer.
Okay.
And this isn't just someone watching them. They have to understand the equipment and be able to give feedback.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like having a driving instructor.
Exactly. The stakes are a lot higher, though.
Yeah, definitely. So are there any limits on what a trainee can do before they're certified?
Absolutely. OSHA has specific rules to keep everyone safe.
Like what?
Well, trainees can't operate near power lines at all.
That makes sense.
They can't hoist personnel, and they can't work on multi-crane lifts until they have the right certification.
So those are the really risky operations.
Exactly. And remember, we're not just talking about the trainees' safety, it's everyone on that job site.
That's a good point. So they're really trying to minimize the risks.
Absolutely.
So this constant monitoring, how does that work? Does the trainer have to be right next to them all the time?
Well, thankfully, no.
I was imagining someone holding onto the crane.
They need to be close enough to see the trainee and be able to communicate with them.
Okay.
Usually that's verbally or with hand signals, but for tower cranes where it can be harder to see, they have to use a radio or something like that.
Oh, okay. So they've thought about the different types of cranes.
Exactly. And even trainers need a break sometimes.
Right.
So OSHA says they can take short breaks, but they can't be longer than 15 minutes.
Okay.
And only one break per hour.
So they can't just take off.
Right. And before they take a break, they have to tell the trainee what they can and can't do.
So it's still structured even during the break.
Exactly. It's all about safety.
So it sounds like OSHA is really focused on communication and structure when it comes to training.
That's exactly right. And remember, this isn't just for new operators.
Oh, right.
If someone needs a refresher, maybe because there are new safety protocols or new equipment, they have to get retraining.
So it's like continuing education.
Exactly. You have to keep learning.
So what happens after retraining?
Well, the employer has to evaluate the operator again.
Okay, to make sure they got it.
Exactly. It's about making sure that training is actually making a difference.
So it's all about that continuous improvement.
For sure.
So OSHA is really creating this whole system. It's not just about the rule.
Yeah, they're trying to build a culture of safety.
And they're acknowledging that people learn differently
Absolutely.
and that everyone needs support.
Exactly.
I'm really impressed with how detailed they are.
It really is a comprehensive system.
And it's all to protect the workers.
That's the goal. Make sure everyone goes home safe.
Yeah, it's really amazing how much they think of when it comes to keeping people safe, especially in such a high-risk industry like this. And we've talked about a lot, the training, the certification, the requirements for those in training. But I keep thinking about technology.
Oh, yeah. How can we forget about that?
Right? It's like the elephant in the room.
It is. Crane technology is changing so fast.
Yeah.
And it's definitely going to change how we approach safety in the future.
Exactly. We've got these really complex computer systems now and automated features, and even remote operation is becoming a thing.
Oh.
How does OSHA even keep up with all of that?
It's a challenge, but they're aware of it, and they're
Okay.
trying to adapt. One example we've already talked about is that flexibility with the testing process.
Oh, right, like how they could be in other languages?
Yeah, exactly. That's them recognizing that the workforce is becoming more and more diverse,
Yeah.
and that the construction industry is global.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Not everyone speaks English.
Right, and especially when you're dealing with all this complicated machinery and these safety protocols.
Right.
Yeah.
Super important. So how do they make sure that those tests are clear and consistent when they're in different languages?
Well, it all comes down to documentation.
Okay.
OSHA requires those certification documents to state very clearly what language the test was given in.
So no confusion.
Exactly.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Okay.
But what about the equipment itself? If someone's certified in Spanish, for example, can they just operate any crane, even if the controls are in English?
That's where OSHA has put in another safeguard.
Okay.
To avoid any confusion or, something really dangerous happening, the operator can only work with equipment that has materials in their language.
Gotcha.
So that means things like the manuals, the load charts, the safety instructions, all that has to be in the same language as their certification.
That's a really smart idea.
It's all about making sure everyone understands everything.
Right. So they really have thought of everything.
They've tried to.
It's pretty impressive how much detail they put into all of this.
It shows how committed they are to safety.
It really does. So it sounds like OSHA is really trying to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to all this new technology.
They're trying their best. It's not easy, but it's important.
Right. And as technology continues to change, I'm sure we're going to see even more changes with the training and the certification and the evaluation.
Absolutely. Things are going to keep evolving.
Well, this has been a really eye-opening deep dive into crane operator safety and certification.
It's a fascinating topic.
It is. It's so much more complex than I ever thought it would be.
There's a lot to it.
But it's really good to know that there's such a strong system in place to protect these workers.
It is. It's all about keeping people safe.
Huge thank you to Safety One Source for presenting this deep dive with us.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been so helpful for our listeners, whether they're operators or safety professionals or just starting out in the industry.
And to everyone listening, remember, safety is an ongoing thing.
Yeah, it never ends.
It does. Stay informed, ask questions, and if you see something that's not safe, say something.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to speak up.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, I have one more question for you. We've talked a lot about what's happening now, but what about the future? How do you think things will change with operator training and evaluation as technology keeps developing?
That's a great question, and I think we all need to be thinking about that. As cranes become more and more high-tech.
Right, with all those computers and automation.
Exactly. I think training programs are going to have to change, too.
Okay.
Operators are going to need to be more tech-savvy.
So it's not just about knowing how to operate the machine.
Right. They need to be able to troubleshoot software problems and understand all those complex systems.
So it's a whole new skill set.
It is, and I think evaluation methods will have to change too. Well, we might see things like simulations or virtual reality being used.
Oh, that's interesting.
To see how operators handle different situations.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Especially emergencies. But no matter how much technology changes, we can't forget about safety.
Absolutely. That has to be the priority.
It does.
So technology should be a tool to help us be safer.
Not replace the human element.
Right, because at the end of the day, it's the operator who's making the decisions.
It is. They need the knowledge and the skills to keep everyone safe.
I think that's a really important point to end on. Technology is great, but it's the people who make the difference.
I agree. It's about that partnership between human expertise and technology working together to make the crane industry safer and more efficient.
Well said. This has been an incredibly informative deep dive, and we hope our listeners feel more confident about navigating the world of crane operator safety and certification. Thanks for joining us, and stay safe out there.